Oh, right. There it is. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Only hours after we finished last week's podcast, President Joe Biden took the stage. Oh, hi, Chris. To call the dangerous Trump-supporting Republicans a bunch of fascists. This seems to be continuing a recent trend of Biden putting on a tough guy persona. How will this strategy play out in terms of policy and pushing his agenda? We're going to talk about this and more on episode 362 of the In the Tank podcast. All right. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. As always, I am your host, Donald Kendal. Joining me today, I've got Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute. How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm doing really well. I was very disappointed. No finger guns today to start.
I didn't do it?
Oh. No, you did hands.
Oh,
you should have done fists like Biden, which we'll show in a minute. But yeah, I have a root canal update. As I mentioned on last. Yes. The good news is did not have a root canal on Friday. It was just a consultation. The bad news is now I need 2 root canals.
Oh, jeez. Oh, that's what you get for...
Yeah, so I'm not quite as grumpy as I was last week leading into the Friday root canal that I thought I was going to have. So just stay tuned. As usual, every week I'll be extra grumpy and you'll know why.
Root canal gate. Got it. We'll stay tuned. Also joining us, we got Justin Haskins, editorial director of the Heartland Institute and co-author of Glenn Beck's latest book, The Great Reset, Joe Biden and the Rise of 21st Century Fascism. How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm doing good. I would, of all the things that I do that sort of play into the fact that I'm just like the standard white guy, other than, I would say the whitest part about me is that I really do enjoy the pumpkin flavored drinks that come about this time of year.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing in a way. I feel like it's me and 5 other college-aged girls that are ordering them. But finally, the pumpkin latte thing came out today at the local coffee shop, which is new because I'm not from here. So this is a new experience for me. And they use organic puree pumpkin in the drink rather than just the typical crap that they put in at Starbucks. So I'm happy as I could possibly be right now.
Did you have to put on your Ugg boots and sweater vest to order that, or did they just give it to you in what you're wearing?
No, they Ugg boots are encouraged but not required. It's kind of like face masks around here. So
also joining us, we've got Chris Talgo, senior editor at the Heartland Institute. How are you today, good sir?
Doing good. Tonight is the official opening of the NFL season, so I'm pretty excited. We had our fantasy draft last night, and I think it's gonna be a great season ahead of us.
Oh, fantastic!
Who's playing, by the way?
Bills and Rams.
Bills and Rams.
Bills at Rams.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes,
Bills
and
Rams,
it looks as if the Chicago Bears are going to have their presentation on what they're going to do in Arlington Heights, if and when that plays out. So that's also something kind of interesting to look forward to here at the compound of the Heartland Institute in Arlington Heights. So we'll be just in the back door of the Chicago Bears. So that'll be interesting. So we got a lot to get into, but before we do, I have to put that message out there to everyone that's listening, mostly our audio-only listeners that are probably catching this show on a Friday, and telling them that you can join us a day earlier on Thursday at noon Central Time, where you can find us streaming on Facebook and Rumble and YouTube and Twitter, and you can join in the conversations. You can throw your questions and comments in the stream, and maybe we'll show your comments on the screen. Maybe we'll address your questions on the fly. So we do have I want to get into the Joe Biden. I want to dedicate most of this episode to Joe Biden, but I want to talk real briefly about something that we talked about last week, and that is the energy rationing that is going on in California. So earlier this week, some California residents once again received a text alert begging them to use less energy while the energy grid strained under high demand due to people using air conditioning because of the heat wave that's going on. So I've got this article that's, and everything I talk about article-wise are in the show notes, but I have this article from Bloomberg, and I want to read just the opening couple paragraphs of this. So it says, a timely mobile alert may have prevented hundreds of thousands of Californians from being plunged into darkness in the middle of a heat wave Tuesday night. Just before 5:30 p.m. local time, California's grid operator ordered its highest level of emergency, warning that blackouts were imminent. Then, at 5:48 p.m., the state's Office of Emergency Services sent out a text alert to people in targeted counties asking them to conserve power if they could. Within 5 minutes, the grid emergency was all but over. So I read this because it's written as if it's a success story. And like this is something to be proud of, And like on one level, I kind of get it. Like people responded quickly. They averted a disaster. It only took 5 minutes for people to respond. But on a different level, a more important level, California has a power grid so inadequate that it routinely has to beg people to use less power. So Justin, were you on? You weren't on last week. Let's get your thoughts on this.
I don't even remember if I was on last week, to be honest.
Energy rationing. Go ahead. Take it from the top.
I mean, look, is anyone surprised at this point? One of the things that, we just had you and I just did an episode, recorded an episode of Justin and Donald Save America, a far better show than this one.
Oh,
well, I mean, that. You're on that show too.
I can't admit it though.
and when we were recording that show, one of the things that came up, we had Carol Roth on, who's awesome, totally amazing, expert on ESG and financial system and inflation and all of that stuff. And one of the things that came up was this idea that so much of what we're seeing with energy and all of the craziness that's driving inflation, which is a lot of that's related to energy prices and the rationing and the insanity that's going on in Europe right now and everything with energy prices. This is all so predictable. Right. I mean, people at the Heartland Institute have been talking about this for literally like the entire existence of this organization, like for 3 decades. They've been saying, if you go this route, we're going to have all these problems. And every year, every month, every day, practically, we've been saying this forever. And we've now seen the effects of that. Like it's actually all the things that we said, if you go in this direction, it's going to keep getting worse. And it's slowly been getting worse. Not everywhere, but in certain places, it's slowly been getting worse. And in California is now, and Europe, these are the poster children for what really terrible economic and energy policy looks like. Everything that we've been saying for decades is coming true. It's being proven in real time. And it's not just in California. It's not just in Europe. It's literally everywhere in the world. The places that are pursuing energy policy that emphasizes getting the balancing affordable energy with clean energy. They're focusing on natural gas and things like that. Those economies are booming. The places that are dependent on energy that makes no sense, like wind and solar, which is not good for the environment and requires lots of mining. And the cobalt that's used in a lot of these processes is mined by little children in Africa and all of that stuff. And it's really expensive and really inefficient, and you can't run it all the time, and it's completely unproven. All of those technology, the places that are relying on those are seeing their energy prices skyrocket. Right. And it's like, how much evidence and data do you need before you realize, we screwed up. We shouldn't have gone that route.
Well, and Jim made this point last week, but there are a lot of people that are surprised by this. And the reason why they're surprised by this is because the media, by and large, ignores the messages that we have to say because it's tainted with climate denialism or something like that. So they don't put in any potential repercussions of these wrong-headed plans because it's going to look like it's climate denialism. So they don't put our warnings in there. So these people that are only seeing the mainstream media, the corporate media, they are surprised when all of these plans go south. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. obviously it's very predictable for us, but people that aren't like tuning into this show or going to heartland.org or seeing like the truth about these matters, they are very surprised by this.
Yeah, as I said last week, the media doesn't even report there's no pushback to this green fantasy at all. The general public actually believes that we can transition to a fully green, renewable energy system and keep our standard of living. We can't. It is literally impossible. We cannot mine enough copper for all the transmission lines that will be necessary to bring power from wind turbines, which will ruin the environment, destroy the environment and destroy lots of birds. The solar panels, which will severely disrupt wild ecosystems. They don't care. See, these environmentalists say they care about the environment. They actually don't, because they don't care about the utter destruction of our landscape through all of this, instead of small footprints like a coal plant or a natural gas plant or a nuclear power plant. And so they don't see any skepticism of these fantasies in any of the media that they normally consume, all the corporate media, CNN, MSNBC. I have friends and family members that, I don't talk about these kind of things all the time in my private life, right? But sometimes these things come up and they have no idea that these things happen, because they get their news from these organizations. What I find really funny is that, speaking of California, a friend of mine sent me an email just about an hour before we started this podcast today. Our idiot Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm went out to California last week for a media tour of the state, just as this energy crisis was starting to gain steam in California. And she said, quote, "California is in the lead and can show the rest of the nation how it's done." I love the fact that California is unabashedly bold about energy policy.
Oh, it's great. It's paying off for them.
Yeah. And then the kicker, California is the canary in a coal mine. And as noted in the email from my friend, apparently nobody told Jennifer that the canary dies.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
That's the whole point.
We're calling them the canary in the coal mine. That's what we should be saying.
It's 100% right. California is the canary in a coal mine, and we're all doomed.
So this idea of like a text message going out to tell everyone not to use any power. So apparently this is going to just be the way of the future for a couple of reasons. One, because, their energy system doesn't seem like it's going in the right path. We've been talking about this endlessly. But also because like this type of system is apparently being like factored into a whole bunch of other stuff. So I've been doing a lot of research on the World Economic Forum, and they have, because all the Great Reset stuff. And they have like an entire part of their website dedicated to this concept of smart cities. And this is the idea that like technology is going to be used to and utilized within cities to make like people's lives better, to more efficient uses of energy, all that type of stuff. And they talk about how this technology is going to be used to help protect the environment, to help the transportation system, to help energy efficiency in buildings and all of that. So in this infographic, and I should pull it up for you because this is real. They have an example of how this technology can be used to fix all of these different things. And the example that they have and I want your reaction, so put me on the screen with everyone showing. For the example of the how they're going to protect the environment, they say that there's going to be sensors that are going to be gauging the flow in the sewer systems and to see how much, the sewer systems are overloaded. And if the sensors detect that the sewer systems are getting overloaded, they are going to send text alerts to people telling them not to flush their toilets. I swear this is real. It's called don'tflush.me. It's an actual thing on the World Economic Forum's like papers talking about these smart cities. So what was once just relegated to like stopping you from using too much energy when the grid is overloaded is also going to be applied to you not using your toilet when the sewer system is overloaded. I mean, Chris, is this type of like top down, like centrally controlled system? Is this just something that we're all going to have to live with, or what do you think?
Well, I hope not. I think the California situation is about conditioning. I think they're trying to condition their population into accepting a lower standard of living. And if that means, okay, between the hours of 4 o'clock and 9 p.m., you must set your thermostats to 78 degrees and not use large appliances.
Or your toilet.
Or your toilet for that matter. just hold it for 5 hours, just try really hard. But I think this is part of a longer term plan to condition societies into having lower expectations. And it's just really sad because California, not that long ago, was, the land of opportunity. And, in the past few decades, California has devolved into a crime-ridden, third world type, like, failed state with, a humongous homeless population. The income inequality in California is just off the charts. And Donnie, I think it's almost like a return to the feudal era, where the serfs live, especially in California. The serfs live down in the valley, and the Nancy Pelosi's and the Gavin Newsoms, they live high in the Hollywood Hills, and they just held the peasants, below them, literally and figuratively. You know what? You don't need to use your appliances between these hours. Set your thermostat at 78 degrees, even if it's 104 degrees outside, and just sweat it out. So, gosh, it's just so frustrating because this is all self-inflicted. It does not have to be this way. However, California is the largest state in the union, and LA County is the most populous county in the union. And if they're just, cramming these types of policies, down the throat of the public, it makes me concerned that this is the future.
Gentlemen, any parting words on this topic, or else I want to jump into our main topic so we have plenty of time to talk about it.
Well, I'm always a pessimist, so I'm always looking out for the dystopian future that's right around the corner. And in my wildest dreams, I never would have thought the government would have been monitoring my bowel movement schedule. But that's not even in the future.
Mistake, Jim.
Yeah, There's nothing.
Yeah.
There is no end to what the government will monitor. They don't care at all. I remember actually several years ago, I wrote back. Oh, actually, this was like maybe the first year that I was working here. I got an article on Drudge Report, which used to matter because Drudge Report used to be good. And it was about how the EPA launched a program under Barack Obama back when he was president, monitoring showers in hotels, because they were concerned about how long people take showers, and they were trying to come up with some sort of a study to estimate what people should do with their shower time in hotels and all this other stuff. It was really bad for the planet and how much water used. So, I mean, that was, showers and toilets really aren't that far apart from each other. They're in the same room. So, I mean, it's not that shocking that they would just move over to the other thing that consumes water in the room.
Well, just get ready for it, folks. Get ready for it. We're going to have plenty more to talk about that in the future. But so I do want to jump to our main topic, the topic of Joe Biden, right? So, or Dark Brandon. So gather around, folks. Here, let's put me in single screen. There we go. Gather around, folks. Let me tell you about the legend of Dark Brandon. So back in the earliest days of the 2020s, there existed a man named Joe Biden. Despite becoming president of the most powerful country on the planet, Biden was an incompetent leader, beset by numerous policy failures. From Afghanistan and Build Back Better to skyrocketing inflation and gas prices, poor old Joe Biden couldn't seem to do anything right. Following this rampant failure was a chorus of ridicule. As the weeks of his presidency passed, F. Joe Biden turned into Let's Go Brandon. Gas pumps were decorated with stickers that read, I did that. It seemed like poor old Brandon was destined to become a one-term president. But then, out of the ashes comes a new version of Joe Biden, a Joe Biden that oversaw the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, a Joe Biden that now has seen gas prices drop substantially from their all-time highs, a Joe Biden that doesn't seem to take shit from anybody anymore, a Joe Biden who is going to go after his political opponents like we haven't ever seen since the mid-1800s. No, it wasn't even Joe Biden at all. Behold the rise of Dark Brandon.
Equality and democracy are under assault. We do ourselves no favor to pretend otherwise. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. The Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now as I speak in state after state to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, this speech was given the night after we recorded last week's podcast. So surely by now, everyone's seen at least some response to this. It was clearly, based on the clip, very divisive. More divisive than any speech that I've heard any president give in my lifetime. Who wants first chop at this? I know Jim is chomping at the bit to get in on this, but if anyone wants to take lead before he goes into a classic Jim rant, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just make one quick point? I'm going to write an op-ed about this tomorrow. I wonder why the Democrats are so concerned about these MAGA candidates. Then why are they throwing $50 million in their primary races? Because the DNCCC has spent more than $50 million to get these so-called MAGA, domestic terrorists, semi-fascists, to win their primaries because they think that they have a better chance of beating them in the general election in November. So this is complete and utter politics.
Sure.
This is just shameful. It just makes my blood boil. It's nothing but projection. This is coming from the party that wants to pack the court, that wants to get rid of the Electoral College, that wants to undo so many of the fundamental, governing principles that this country has, had for the past 200 years. Yet they're calling the other side extremists and fascists and all the, other names in the book that they can come up with. Right. It is just beyond the pale.
Yeah, I do want to shift all of this into a policy direction, but like the optics of this was just so insane that even though this is like a week-old story, we just felt like we had to lead off with it. Jim, I'll toss it to you unless Justin wants to jump in.
Let's go to Mr. Pumpkin Spice first. Maybe some thoughts.
It's the nicest thing you've ever said to me, Jim.
That's true.
That is true. It's sad, but it's true. So look, I think one of the most amazing things about the Democratic Party over the past 6-7 years or so is that every single thing they accuse the Republicans or conservatives or the evil MAGA people of being, they are themselves in the most obvious, transparent ways possible. Like, it's not even something where you have to, tie together a whole bunch of strings on a corkboard to piece this, it doesn't require a lot of thinking. It's really straightforward. When you have a president of the United States standing with military in the background, with a creepy red colored backdrop, as if he's, I don't know, Stalin, Mussolini, you name the fascist, accusing the other side of being fascists, while he's advocating for literally fascist policies throughout his entire government, which he's been doing, because the Democrats apparently have no idea what fascism actually is. They don't know what it is, because if they knew what fascism is, then they would stop calling Republicans fascists, because it's impossible to be a fascist and want less federal government involvement in your life. That's not possible. The whole concept of fascism involves a strong, powerful, centralized national government. That's the whole point of fascism. That's one of the main distinguishing features of it. And Republicans, including Donald Trump, who they accuse of being the fascist of all fascists, cut more regulations and taxes than any president we've had in a long, long time. So how can he be the fascist? And then, and the idea that giving states more rights makes us fascist also makes no sense, because we're decentralizing power. So that makes no sense. the optics of it made him look like a fascist, obviously. But then even if you want to go to the number one thing, which he referenced in a variety of different ways through his incredibly inspiring speech, of the idea of stealing elections or not caring about democracy, or this idea that they don't believe in democratic elections and all this stuff, right? Which he referenced again in a bunch of different ways, just in the clips we saw there. And I'm sure he did it a million other times throughout the speech as well. This is the same group of people that for 2 years said the election of Donald Trump winning in 2016 was a stolen, illegitimate election that only happened because of Russian collusion, the involvement in all of these wild conspiracy theories that they had about the president of the United States being blackmailed by Vladimir Putin because there was secret pornographic videotapes of Donald Trump from Russian hotels. Like, this was the kind of stuff they were saying for years. So think about this. This is a guy where the optics are obviously fascistic, advocating for fascistic policies, accusing the other side of being fascist on the basis of some of them believing that the 2020 election was not a valid election, when they had been advocating for years that the 2016 election was not a valid election. Like, literally every single word that comes out of this guy's mouth is just accusing Republicans or accusing the right of being whatever it is they're saying this week, is something that they themselves are openly calling for. A lack of privacy, a lack of individual rights, not respecting the Constitution. I mean, this is laughable. This is the same people who are openly opposed to the Second Amendment, which I'm pretty sure is part of the Constitution last time I checked. So on what free speech? These are the free speech advocates? Like, literally, name the right. What is the right in the Constitution? The only thing that they could point to, and literally the only thing that they would say when they're talking about freedom and privacy and all this crap, is abortion. That's the only thing. And regardless of what you think of abortion, you're watching this video, there is nothing in the Constitution that says anything about it. Nothing about healthcare privacy, nothing about abortion, nothing. It's not even mentioned. It's not even referenced in passing. And why would it be? The people who wrote the Constitution didn't think it should be a right anyway. They were opposed to it. So but you know what is? The Second Amendment and the First Amendment and all these other amendments that they don't care about. The 10th Amendment, which actually does deal with this issue of Roe v. Wade and who has the ability to make these decisions, right? Because the 10th Amendment very clearly says those rights, those powers not given to the federal government belong to the states or to the people respectively. Is that their position on abortion rights? No. So it's just sort of the pinnacle. I think this was the pinnacle moment of hypocrisy in American politics. And I think we're at the point now where the only people who could have watched this and not come away with saying, oh my God, like, the president of the United States is a hypocrite. He looks like a fascist. He looks like an authoritarian. He's maybe the most divisive president we've ever had, are either people who are so partisan and so unwilling to see what's right in front of their face that they just can't even comprehend what is obvious, or people like us who are saying exactly the same sorts of things that I'm saying right now. And then there's a whole bunch of other people who just don't even pay attention anymore because of how screwed up our political system is. And that's pretty much where we're at. I mean, if you really need to completely re-examine your life, if you can't see why that video is not both terrifying and hypocritical and really dangerous when you think about it. Because for all the talk about January 6th and everything else, this is a guy using incredibly divisive, incredibly dangerous language with the military backdrop behind him, accusing the other side of being very, very radical. Yeah, treasonous, essentially. I mean, where is the media? We already know where the media is. They don't care. But
carrying water for them.
This is a dangerous moment in history. It really is, because this is the president of the United States saying these things about a massive part of the population in the wake of 2 previous elections where both sides were saying the election had been stolen. I mean, we really are in a dangerous moment. And if we do not find a way as a country to get some common ground and to step back and realize we're going down a very dark road, we are going to find ourselves with blood on the streets. I really think that that's going to happen. And I just hope that this is a wake-up call for people. I don't think it is, but I hope that it is.
Jim, I mean, everyone that watches this podcast knows that I'm a Trump fan. I like the guy, but I don't remember. I'm trying to strain my brain, and maybe I'm biased because of my fandom of him, but I don't remember him calling out huge swaths of the Democratic fan base or voter base as being some type of fascist or whatever. He'll go after certain politicians. He'll call CNN fake news. But I don't think he ever went to this level. What do you think?
No, he didn't. I don't know if it was Saul Alinsky or maybe it was Stalin or, Goebbels or something. I don't know. But they had, but they said, accuse your opponents of exactly what you were doing, especially in this case, when you're up to something no good. And that's exactly what all this is. I said it on the podcast last week. I say it a lot. To understand the left, you just have to think projection. They project upon their political opponents everything that they think and everything that they are doing. And this is the case in this one. The only true sentence, the only sentence that actually made logical sense that Joe Biden said in this, as you said, Justin, terrifying, really, speech, unprecedented, was that too much of what's happening today is not normal. And it's true. This is a president calling 74 million people, half this country, half the voters in this country, that they are consumed with an extremism that, quote, threatens the very foundations of our republic and that violates the very soul of the nation. And that, he tried to walk this back the other day saying, no, I don't think any Trump voters feel these things. You said it the previous night, Biden, and I guess to their very small credit, the media is not, at least some of the media, not letting him get away with that, because he said the GOP is dominated by Trump and the MAGA Republicans, and that fact, in his mind, is a threat to the country. And as noted before, we don't respect the Constitution. We won't accept the results of a free election. The Democratic Party has not accepted the results of a presidential election since 1988. Every other time a Republican has won, they have not accepted the results. So shut up about that. I'm tired of hearing about that garbage either. Not even to think about things recently in these times, and the idea that working to give power to their cronies, and elected and their partisans to control, who wins elections. Again, don't even get me started. Again, it's all projection. I mean, look, you just look at what happened in Pennsylvania in the 2020 election. In Michigan, suddenly, 100,000 votes show up and they're all for Biden. In the middle of the night, they say they're going to stop counting to get the Republicans to leave the room and then start counting again. Do you think MAGA people did that? When MAGA people were trying to watch the election counting in some of these states, the cronies of the Democratic Party boarded up the windows so people couldn't look in and observe what was going on. This is all on tape, and this is all projection from him. But one of the reasons this is dangerous, I mean, you guys should remember the name James Hodgkinson. He's the man who went to the Republicans practicing for the congressional baseball game with the intent of assassinating several Republican sitting congressmen. And why did he do that? Because he watched MSNBC a lot, apparently watched a lot of Rachel Maddow, and was told by the people he listened to that the Republican healthcare plan was going to kill millions of people. It's the kind of rhetoric that is just routine in our politics these days. And this guy wanted to do a mass assassination of Republicans based on him being inspired by that. And this president at this time says this stuff, that the very foundation of our republic is at risk by half this country. And there will be, we pray that it won't come to that. But if just saying that the Republican healthcare plan is going to kill people can inspire someone like James Hodgkinson, what do you think a speech like this is going to do? Because if you watched MSNBC, Chris, and CNN, Chris, you do that, so I don't have to do it. I'll watch a clip or two on Twitter. All of the commentators on CNN and MSNBC praised the speech. They said it was great. This is exactly the message America needs. This is crazy. And then just what, we have the time. One more thing. Because I want to talk about some of the quote unquote more reasonable things that Joe Biden said in this speech, along with saying that he said that the MAGA agenda is a threat to the nation. So what is the MAGA agenda? It's energy independence. It's no more foreign wars, no forced vaccinations. Let's get these useless and burdensome regulations out of the way of business so we can have a thriving economy.
Draining the swamp.
Secure border, letting people keep more of what they earn by lowering taxes. That's the MAGA agenda. What do you think? Does he think half this country was voting for some kind of authoritarian? Where is the authoritarian MAGA folks? Where are they? Where are these authoritarians that MAGAs are worshiping? They don't exist. And Trump was not an authoritarian either. He was not a dictator. When COVID hit this country, he did not. So we had some lockdowns and all that stuff, but he said repeatedly, because he was pressed, you got to lock down the country. And he's like, that's more of a state and local issue. I'm going to leave it to them to do it. And so we had blue states like Illinois, severe lockdowns and shutdowns, schools closed, non-essential businesses closed, people's lives ruined. But in states like Florida, where they don't have a dummy blue Democrat governor, they had freedom. And so Trump, the authoritarian, left it to the states, embraced federalism, the de-evolution of power from himself to others. Yet he's a totalitarian. So maybe is DeSantis an authoritarian? Is that who he was hinting at? Because he could be a potential opponent for Joe Biden in 2022 as well?
Yes.
No. Well, how? I mean, he signed legislation, banning masks in schools. He didn't order it. He signed a piece of legislation teaching sex education to 5-year-olds. The legislature says we don't want that. He signed a piece of legislation to make that done. That's not authoritarian. That's how a republic works. That's how democracy works in this country. And so this is a complete fantasy. And they keep pushing this idea. And they've done it from the minute Trump was running for president, that he's some kind of dictator and authoritarian. And then we have this president with a backdrop like it was something out of the Empire in Star Wars, with his Imperial Guards behind him and blood red lights behind him, warning the country that half of the people around you want to destroy this nation. Yet Trump is the fascist. Trump is the authoritarian. Trump is the real danger. It's mind blowing, and I really do pray with you, Justin, that it will not come to violence in the streets. But it seems like they really, really want it.
Hey, Donnie, just going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, the California car ban and how bad things are in California. Remember, that was not passed by the legislature. That was passed by a board, the California Air Resources Board. Lots of the things that Joe Biden has done, besides the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan, has almost exclusively been done by bureaucrats. And I think this goes back to Barack Obama. I've got my pen and my phone, so when I can't get everything I want to get done through Congress, just do my little end around. And I think that Joe Biden has done that much more frequently, and he's increased the scope of it. And I'm very concerned that after the midterm elections, he's going to be a lame duck, if not already. He's going to go even more in that direction, where he just has his executive departments and bureaucrats just start basically passing laws.
Yeah,
I just want to real quick. I just want to add one real quick thing before we move on. I think that's a great point. That's obviously a sign of fascism when you are and not being involved in having democratically elected representatives writing bills and passing laws to make decisions. Instead, you just do it yourself through the central government. That is fascism. But the other thing, going back to some of the stuff that Jim said, when you couple this kind of language, which has been going on now for a long, long time, and you couple this really extremist language with this idea that not just democracy is at stake, or that the right in America doesn't like democratically elected elections or whatever, but when you couple these kinds of ideas with we're all going to die from climate change, okay? If enough people actually believe those two things, then yeah, you could justify almost anything. You could justify almost any authoritarian action imaginable, not just from the government, but just from people in the street, just vigilantes. Because if the choices are either you be an authoritarian or everyone dies and the world, literally is lifeless or nearly lifeless, or whole cities get swallowed up by oceans and everyone, millions of people are dead, then what's the more moral course of action? And that is like literally what Antifa and these radical type groups, that's the kind of stuff they say.
Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I had a couple of other things that I wanted to get to before I got into some of the policy aspects of this, but Justin's comment segues perfectly into one of the things that I wanted to talk about. And that is some of the potential actions that this Biden administration may be taking if he does embrace this, hard nose. I'm just going to ram through my political will, my agenda, regardless of whatever the political blowback might be, which I think is what all of this is kind of amounting to. So I've got this article. It's the Washington Post article, How Biden Could Help U.S. Reach Climate Goals on His Own. So it says, while the Inflation Reduction Act will help make a significant cut in U.S. emissions, estimates suggest it won't be enough to help the country reach its climate targets. Wow, surprise, surprise. President Biden's use of executive action, experts say, will be a key element in driving further change. The Biden administration has already undertaken dozens of executive actions on climate, but a new report out Monday details what could lie ahead. Activists are pushing White House officials who are eager to mobilize the party's base in the November election and are less worried about alienating centrist lawmakers over energy policy to do more. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. This article is referencing exactly what I've been talking about. It says the 99-page report published by the Revolving Door Project, an initiative of the liberal think tank Center for Economic and Policy Research, lays out potential executive branch policies available under current law, even without the declaration of a climate emergency, which could open up some additional powers. So now this is a quote. We're trying to advocate for this administration to take seriously a whole of government approach to a crisis of apocalyptic proportions, says Tony Aguilar Rosenthal, a researcher with the Revolving Door Project and one of the report's authors. There exists massive but wildly underutilized authorities that could do real good for real people today. We're asking the administration to do that, to take those steps right now, and to service that crisis, to meet it where it is. So this is exactly what Justin was talking about. This is exactly what I've been talking about, that, that Biden could say, like, hey, to fight climate change, we have to do all of this stuff. And no, we're not going to wait for Congress to do it. I'm going to unilaterally do it with executive action. Jim, I'm kind of surprised that they haven't done more of this, especially, with all the rhetoric of the world's ending and all of that stuff. So do you think it's just a matter of time before this happens? What do you think?
I think, it's a matter of time. I mean, if the shellacking in November comes about as anticipated, although it may be closer than we think, who knows what the polls are saying these days? Maybe that totalitarian speech by Biden will actually inspire his base to come out. And that's actually what that speech was all about. It was a political speech. It was not a policy speech. It was not really about Biden's true concern about protecting the soul of the nation. It was to rally his base because, Democrats seem convinced that, to get them excited, they have to feel like they're saving the world at all times. Your average conservative or Republican voter is just like, I'll vote for the least worst guy who might give me a little bit more freedom, might make it easier to run my business or something like that. No. Democrat voters, they're saving the world. And so if they fail to save the world, inspired by Biden in November, you're going to see a lot of these executive actions, especially on climate. I mean, within a week of the West Virginia EPA decision, his administration was already trying to figure out ways to work around it. And as you're reading that story from the Washington Post, which is smiling in its tone upon these, what's the word for it, authoritarian actions by this president, I was reminded that Donald Trump could do nothing. Donald Trump tried to exercise his legitimate powers as the executive. and he was resisted by the media and the establishment and the deep state and his own bureaucracy at every single turn. And here we have a story in the Washington Post that says, hey, you know what? Elections, they don't really matter because this president should just be able to take any action necessary to save the climate and for all of these other things. Donald Trump was not allowed to even do his legitimate executive authority. And now we have this media, our corrupt corporate media, trying to lay the groundwork to make every excuse in the book for Biden to act unlawfully and authoritarian.
Chris, this it even mentions it in the article here that Joe Biden has undertaken dozens of executive actions on climate. It seems like every presidency for the last several presidencies have just ramped up their executive order usage of executive orders. I can't imagine you're going to say that we should expect anything different in the remaining years of Joe Biden's first term.
Absolutely not. I know we're talking mostly about his executive actions in response to climate change, but look at what he just did a couple of weeks ago with student loans. He just, just decided one morning that he could just, wipe away up to $1 trillion in federal student loans. I mean, I don't know where in the Constitution the president is allowed to do that, but hopefully we'll get some court cases against that. But I think that this is a desperate move. I think that the Democrats are somewhat worried about the November elections, although I watch a lot of politics on TV, and some of the polls are showing that they're making a comeback, and a lot of that could be tied to the abortion issue, but whatever. But I think that they are laying the groundwork for, if they lose either House of Congress or both, that they would then just say, okay, fine. Well, now we're just going to really, jump on the executive action, strategy. And I don't know where, where that would stop. I mean, I think that unfortunately, for many decades, Congress has, has not exercised its constitutional authority in terms of checking the executive branch. And I fear that Congress is just going to kowtow and allow the president to exercise even more unconstitutional powers, just because he happens to be a Democrat, and just because the vast majority of the mass media happen to be in line ideologically. And just like we said, and this point cannot be stressed enough, President Trump had a couple of executive actions that the press immediately jumped on, literally like day one. The Muslim ban from certain countries all the way to the border wall. They were up in arms about that. But Joe Biden can get away with.
It's all for the greater good, Chris. It's all for the greater good,
of course. But different rules apply. So I would not be surprised at all if they were to go on just a tear of executive orders in the next 2 years.
Justin, you kind of started off this unknowingly this conversation about the climate policy and all of that. So I'll give you one more opportunity to hop on this, or I'll move to a different policy subject. Hearing nothing, I'll move on to a different policy subject. So this is another. I was just kind of looking around, like, what can we anticipate out of another couple of years of this Biden administration? So obviously, climate, that's one thing. But another thing that I don't know, it really wasn't news to me until I was starting to do my research for this. But it seems like he's coming out swinging against the Second Amendment lately. So about a week ago, during this speech, Biden proclaimed, we beat the NRA. We took them on and we beat the NRA straight up. We have no idea how you have no idea how intimidating they are to elected officials, said Joe Biden. We're not stopping here. I'm determined to ban assault weapons in this country. Determined. I did it once before and I'll do it again. So apparently this is a part of his promotion of this Safer America plan, which, again, I wasn't aware of until I started doing the research for this. I have a fact sheet from the White House in the show notes that I didn't give to you, Andy. I did this morning. And the fact sheet issued by the White House paints this plan, this Safer America plan, as a pro-law enforcement bill. It talks about more adequately funding police, hiring more cops, investing in crime prevention and a fairer criminal justice system, and increasing firearm background checks. And this does not include anything about banning assault weapons. So I don't know, maybe this is a more recent addition in the speech that he gave a week ago. But I wonder, and I don't know if who's kind of prepared to talk about this, because this is a little bit of a out of left field for you. But do you think that this is going to be like the next big legislative push for Joe Biden, the supposed Safer America plan? Justin or Jim, are you familiar with this? I bet Chris is, just because he's probably seen it on CNN. Anyone care to comment?
So my standard position on any of these things having to do with gun restrictions coming from the left is that they always have something in the holster, so to speak. But they don't actually, but they don't know, I never intend puns, but they only use it right after a mass shooting.
Sure.
So that's the rule. They never even try unless there's been a mass shooting of some kind. So my guess is they're probably going to wait for that. Now, it seems like the focus on sort of beefing up the police and stuff like that, that actually might, that suggests to me that maybe they will try to push this through right away, at least that aspect of it, because they know that that's a winner for the midterms. Sure. And so they might just try to steal some headlines by saying, yeah, we're making America safe. That's why they titled it the way that they titled it. So I think that could be what's going on here. This could just be like a political move to try to show people that actually we are tough on crime, even though our cities are crime ridden and, the whole Black Lives Matters, defund the police thing. But, forget about all that. We're now tough on crime. Yeah. And I think that's probably what this is, more than anything having to do with gun restrictions. I think that's what they're going for.
Jim and Chris, I also want to bring up supposedly Joe Biden taking on Big Pharma. So if you want to comment on this gun thing, this potential ban on assault weapons, the Safer America Act, feel free, or else I'm going to segue quickly into that.
I'll just say quickly that one of the things that Biden said in his speech was that the MAGA Republicans embrace chaos. We just embrace chaos. No, it's not the MAGA Republicans who want to defund the police and also disarm you to make it's not MAGA Republicans who are mayors of these cities that have become that crime and murder and rape and violent crime in almost every major city in the United States is skyrocketing after the BLM riots. They just basically, cops, I guess, I don't know the numbers, but we don't have enough new recruits for the police in Chicago to replace the ones that are retiring. And a lot are retiring early because they're tired of being attacked and smeared. And if they do their job incorrectly, their whole lives could be ruined. So if I was a cop near retirement age, I would take it early and get out. And so the crime waves that we're seeing in all these cities is going to get worse because it's going to be hard to find anybody who wants to be a policeman in a major metropolitan area, while again, at the same time, making it harder for Americans to defend themselves against, crime, which is one of the things that you would own a gun for.
Donnie, just one super quick point on this. In his speech, he also tried to portray MAGA Republicans as politically violent, when we all know that it was the left in the 2020 riots that were, engaging in political violence. And it was the left who tried to assassinate a Supreme Court justice this summer. But I think that they are concerned with the rise in crime across urban centers. And I think that this is just a political ploy because they know that come November, some Americans are going to vote just based on that issue alone.
Yeah, I just wonder if this is going to be one of these Inflation Reduction Act type of things where it's all about protecting the cities and making us more tough on crime. And in reality, it's just a ban on assault weapons or something like that. So another example, I had a couple more videos. Some of them are going to be cut for time, but I had a couple more videos of Joe Biden showing off his new tough guy persona. And the one that I definitely didn't want to cut is him talking about how we took on Big Pharma and we won. So let's go ahead and play. I think it's clip 4.
Not this year. We beat Pharma this year. We beat Pharma this year, and it mattered. We're going to change people's lives. We finally beat Pharma.
All right, I just have to say one thing first. I'm sorry, I just have to get this off my chest. How can he say those words when he mandated the vaccine, and pharmaceutical companies made billions and billions and billions. Joe Biden is the #1 salesman for the pharmaceutical industry. Literally, how can he say that with a straight face? That is just I'm going to have to bite my tongue.
I know it's unbelievable. Not only that, but the different protections that the big pharma companies had, in terms of liability and all of this stuff. It's unbelievable that they're trying to twist, and we talk about this on a weekly basis, that they try to twist reality. They try to spin this narrative into to fit whatever worldview that they're pursuing that week. I mean, we already talked about the whole defund the police. Remember that episode? I don't know, maybe it was like 5 months ago, where they were trying to say that was a Republican idea to defund the police. It's unbelievable what these people try to spin. And this might be one of the most egregious examples of 2022. Jim, I'll let you talk on this.
Well, the reason he's saying that is because I think in the Inflation Reduction Act or something crammed in somewhere, we never actually learn about where these things come from, because we don't actually pass bills in a regular order like we used to do for decades. Everything's just crammed in somewhere and then it's sprung upon us, and there you go. But apparently he's referring to the fact that the federal government is now able to negotiate lower drug prices for Medicaid and Medicare, either both or just one. It's so great. And he actually, later in that speech, it's not in the clip, but he bragged about, like, no senior citizen will have to ever pay more than $2,000 out of pocket over the course of a year for all of their medications. Like, oh, well, that's nice. If you're not on government assistance and you're not in a government healthcare plan, guess what? You don't get those low prices.
Sure.
The big pharma is not going to be losing money on this deal. They may be giving these drugs away at a lower price to people on Medicaid, Medicare, but people with regular insurance are going to be paying higher prices for those. That's guaranteed. That's how that works. And, that's how this is going to work as well. But yeah, Chris, you mentioned it. Big pharma's best friend is Biden and the Democrats over these last 2 years of mandating these COVID vaccines. But you know how you could really beat big pharma? You would end the indemnity from harm that the COVID vaccine manufacturers have enjoyed for now going on 3 years. When does that end, by the way? I mean, is this going to be after the 20th rushed booster that we have to all take in 2025? I mean, or is the answer never? Because it sure as hell feels like never.
Right.
And if you really want to hold big pharma responsible and actually reduce their outsized profits by mandating governments buy these and distribute these vaccines everywhere, you would actually allow people harmed by the COVID vaccine to sue for damages, like they would for every other vaccine that's ever been developed. And that way, big pharma would be incentivized to make vaccines that actually are and act like vaccines instead of a therapeutic medicine. And they would actually be incentivized by having their companies ruined by making 100% sure, or as sure as humanly possible, that the vaccines they produce are safe and don't have lots of harmful side effects for people. But nobody talks about that. Nobody asks that in the White House press briefing. When are you going to, waive this amazing gift that we gave Big Pharma by allowing them to be held harmless for any damages their vaccines might cause?
Not this year. We beat Pharma this year.
Sorry, I had to play that one more time. Justin, unmute yourself. I'm going to go to you first for this wrap-up question. And this just reframing my premise for all of this thing, that I think that Joe Biden, after being just whipped politically for the last couple of years, has now embraced this dark Brandon persona where he's just going to full throttle, just push through all of it, everything that he can, whether it's, shoving his real agenda inside some, piece of legislation that's presented as being a compromise, or whether it's just moving full force with executive orders. I think that he's going to do all of this because he's got no concern about being politically viable next time, because chances are he's not going to run for president for a second term.
He might not be viable at all.
Exactly. So, speak on any aspect of that. Do you agree with my premise? Have at it.
Viable.
Yeah, maybe they're trying. Big Pharma's trying to keep Joe alive. That's for sure. And active too. So I think that the biggest thing, which we actually didn't talk about and don't have time to talk about it now, at length, but the biggest thing, really, the thing that sort of ties into everything that we did mention, is that I believe the White House is gearing up for some kind of a push to create a central bank digital currency, a programmable new currency, a new dollar to supplement the existing printed dollar that can be sort of tracked and controlled and manipulated. And the White House put out it was part of the executive order that came out in March 2022, calling for a study for this and for proposed legislation. And the timelines for that were 6 and 7 months for some of these reports to start coming out. That's actually coming up right now. September, October is 6 to 7 months. So I think we're going to see very soon. And it may not be until after the election that they really try to push it, because depending on how the election goes, they might change their strategy a little bit. But this to them is the golden ticket. This allows them to do anything, because if you can control how people spend their money, if you can, with a push of a button, create more money whenever you want, if you can easily distribute that money whenever you want, if you can track it and say, well, we're going to put a carbon pricing element to all of the money that you spend, or you can't spend it on ammunition or whatever, then that gives them the ability, or the Fed, to essentially control all of society. And I think that touches on literally every issue that you could possibly think of. And I think they're going to craft the legislation based on the evidence that I've seen, which, again, we don't have time to go into, but based on the evidence I've seen, I think they're going to craft the legislation creating this, or the executive order creating this, because they haven't ruled out that they might be able to do this just via executive order, which I think is insane. But I think they're going to try to make that argument that the Fed might be the ones that actually decide how this is used on a day-to-day basis, which is what they do right now with the dollar. So you could literally have a currency coming out within a few years, where the Fed just wakes up one day and says, you know what? Can't buy ammunition with our money anymore. And there would be no legislation. It would just be an edict from the Fed. And we're not saying you can't get ammunition. We're not restricting your ability to get it. We're just saying you can't use money to get it. So, I mean, that could happen. It really could. And I do think they're gearing up for that. And there's going to be a big push for this in the next few months.
It's quite a tease for what will have to be a future episode.
So we're going to go back to the barter system. Awesome. I'll trade you 2 sheep for those 2, blocks.
That's right. All right. We are out of time. As you can hear the music playing, that is my Get Off the Stage music. I want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode of the In the Tank podcast. If you're an audio-only listener catching this on a Friday, join us a day earlier on Thursday for the live show. We are streaming on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Rumble. You can join the conversation. Put in your comments and questions. Maybe we'll show your comments on the screen. Maybe we'll address your questions on the fly. Also, help spread the message that we're trying to spread on this channel just by doing a couple of things. Won't cost you a nickel, but it'll only cost you a second or two. Just hit that like button, share this content, leave a comment under there. All these things help break through those big tech algorithms that prevent content like this from being shown to more people. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at InTheTankPod. If you have any questions, suggestions for the show, feel free to email us at inthethankpodcast@gmail.com. Jim Lakely, where can the fine people find you?
At Jay Lakely on Twitter, at Heartland Inst on Twitter, and always visit heartland.org.
And Justin, same question.
At Justin T. Haskins on Facebook, Twitter, Parler, Getter, on all the other social media I don't think there are any other social media platforms I'm on, but that's something like that.
And Chris Talgo, what do you have to pitch today?
StoppingSocialism.com. Once again, we got a lot of content up there. Bernie is a leading contender for 2024, so check it out.
Yeah.
Feel the burn again.
Fantastic. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.